Let's start. Gürcan, is the turkey currently disappearing?
I don't think it's disappearing, but the way we will remember is disappearing, and that's why when I start producing films, I wanted to focus on that, and and with the found footage, also with the footage I shot. I'm trying to dig the subject of how we remember things. The, do we remember things in a distorted way, or do we forget things or not? And so I'm trying to use the elements which is very personal to me, but now I'm also trying to use the elements of history and not too distant past, actually.
The location, if we can say so, of your film is Izmir, the area where you grew up, and
Yeah, it's my hometown.
you are inviting us to travel with your film to the 70s and 80s, which is the time where the main character of the film lived and was kidnapped, and which is a time, as you told me, in which left and right radical groups were literally shooting each other on the street. Is the past you are showing us also a projection of a future that might return?
It's a completely different environment now, but let me try to explain of the background of the story. That main protagonist Fethiye Sessiz, she's a relative to me, and she was adopted by my grandfather. And there's this tradition in Turkey which we call besleme. If you see someone from some little girl or boy from a family who treated badly, or if they are poor, so someone come and adopted that child, and without any paperwork, so then it becomes a part of the family. So Fethiye was like an aunt to us, or some distant relative, but she was with us all the time, and we didn't know her story at that time. And then when she got older, and when some of the elders passed away in the family, and she started talking about it because she had this kind of dementia, so her mind was getting blurred. So she started to talk about it, and then first we thought that she's being ridiculous, or. Then I realized that she's serious, and but we don't know any details. So I spent a lot of time with her during her hospice period. So I listened loads of things from her, and then I quoted some stuff, and then I constructed in a stylized way, and and I used an actress as a narrator, and so because I promised her that I won't show her, so I decided to show what she sees and what she feels, and or the relationship with the environment around her. And of course that period was very violent, because there was two in one decade there were two army coups, and the left and right wing were killing each other. Also the politics was terribly bad, and she kind of in Izmir, which is the relatively safest part of Turkey, so she became a part of it without knowing it. And so I construct the whole thing from her, what she remembers.
Puangsoi, sorry, I lost my. Yes, of course. Sorry. Um, in a way, you also could have told us about a military putsch in Thailand, of course, which you didn't. You chose not to do it. There's a side note only in your film which refers to the current affairs, which are only interesting to foreigners. Do you feel that there are narratives about Thailand that are literally disappearing behind major narratives like the political ones?
You mean in my film or?
Is your film maybe a counter statement against like the dominant narratives about this?
Can I speak here? I don't know if it's like correct, I mean, or exact answer, but somehow I didn't intend to like, oh, I will put some political stuff in the film, but it's come like spontaneously when my mom like she's always send me a photo of what happened in her life. For example, okay, she went to the hospital, she sent me the photo of the hospital, as I mentioned with you before, like, and I will see the difference, or I will see that something happened in the photo. I mean, after you, how to say, read from the photo. For example, when my mom went to the public hospital, you will see a lot of people. I mean, like thousands, kind of, and you have to be there like 4 a.m. and then you get the doctor at 10 or in the afternoon. But if you go to the private one, you can just like go there and be a king or a queen there, like just 5 minutes, and you don't have to wait, and you can see from the photo. And for the army scene in the fiction part, I mean, there's my family has the T-shirt business, so it kind of, I don't know, music band, rock and roll, and blah blah blah. You can see from the T-shirt, some T-shirt on that. And before that, we are kind of, I don't know, maybe top 10 T-shirt factory. I mean, if you want some kind of band T-shirt, you come to my shop, something like that. But when things pass and everything like economically destroying whatever in, I don't know, 20 years or 10 years before, there are kind of a lot of economic crisis, and somehow nobody like, I mean, they're buying T-shirt, but not from the Zipdruk. They go just for the digital print because it's cheaper. So when it's cheaper, no one, I mean, like, not so many people come to my factory. They go just to print digitally. So my family has, okay, we have to do something with that. So they are more and more not music band now, but anything that people come to my factory, like. And interestingly, the most that come is about like political stuff, because we have demonstration a lot, like last 10 years. And then they will come to, I mean, they come to any factory and they just like, okay, I want this party T-shirt, that party. And I ask my mom, okay, like what your, how to say, point, like you believe in any kind of party, but and why you like choose everything, or even army or police, something like that. And she said like in the funny way, like if they give me money, I just do it. So somehow I think it's, I don't know if it's a statement, but somehow it's ironically. And so I put this kind of thing that she told in the film, but I mean, it's hard to say. I don't have, I mean, I have statements somehow, but I don't want to say it like, okay, I believe in this or that. So I think the film will show it somehow.
You made a short film before which was focusing on Berlin, and you were following traces of the Berlin Wall which came down, and somehow also the political memory of Berlin. You chose a very different approach in that film, and you were really following traces and symbolism. And so did it feel very different for you to focus on an outside system, like coming to Berlin and taking such a position?
I mean, like, I think for I don't want to stereotype, but somehow for Thai people, we know, I mean, less, like for other history. But when you come here, you will see the trash or something like that. But for the Berlin Wall, I mean, I know, okay, you come to Berlin, you see Berlin Wall, and you see trash of the war, and you know some kind of history. And then when I went back to my dad, like we haven't met for long, and then he said, my mom said, oh, you know that your dad went to Berlin once, and then, oh, I haven't known that before. So when I go back to Bangkok, my mom just like give me the photo album of him like going to Berlin, and then I see it, and like it's kind of, how to say, like a history book somehow for me to learn. Okay, I cannot say it's the whole history, but somehow it's history from him to like capture like Berlin Wall or something like that. And there are people even like standing on the wall. And I don't know like which which year, because I haven't asked my dad, but it's funny because I mean I have some photo that I shot, but not like exact the same, but somehow we are on the same place or the same kind of position, but there's no wall or there's something else already. So I don't know if it's like kind of history, but somehow from my father capture I learned, or I learned from that.
Did you feel you learned something about the history of Turkey from Gürcan's film?
Yeah, I have to say it's difficult, but I don't know for how to say. I think we have kind of similar things and stuff. I mean, even it's not the exact thing, but somehow you can see some pressure or some kind of like suppression or something in the film. I mean, even my film didn't say directly or harsh or something like that, but you can see something like we are not allowed to say it directly or something. Yeah.
So you feel there's a repression towards films in Thailand now, or because you're studying in Hamburg, right? So you would have been free to publish anything in Hamburg.
That's interesting. I think for me it's kind of not so good too. I mean, as a filmmaker or as an artist, you can do whatever or free, but somehow we are more self-censor, kind of, and I have to accept that I censor myself too. Like, okay, I'm not sure if it okay to show that, so okay, let's cut it off. Or even there's something like if it's sensitive. I mean, for example, I just talked to my friend that okay, can we show my film in Thailand, because there's one film that they banned because there's a monk crying, and they banned it, and then they have to cut that scene. But in my film, okay, there's a monk, but it's just how to say temporary monk, because we have kind of custom, like if your parent pass away, if you born as a son, you like you should to be a monk. I mean, just for at least 2 days or 1 day, and they believe that okay, you will like take your mom to the heaven. And in my film, I born as a daughter, so I cannot be a monk. So you have to find someone to be a monk, something like that. So we are kind of thinking, okay, our film will be banned in this scene or something like that in the bedroom scene. But I don't know if they ban this scene. I think it's not a film, because it's talk a lot about that. So
Do you
yeah.
think they will think insulting because he's trying on?
There's a mic for everybody. Please. This one's for you. You can take one from there.
Do you think they will think insulting because they are doing this eyelashes thing and with the?
Yeah, I really don't. I really don't know. Yeah.
It's interesting that you talked about something being repressed or self-censorship. I had a funny feeling when I watched Nakorn-Sawan again after watching Carla's film, actually, because both protagonists, maybe I say 1 or 2 words about your film. You made a film about your own past. Actually, you lost your parents because they both died of AIDS, and you made a film about your own childhood. The film starts directly after the parents died. We don't see anything of them, and the moment of their disappearance is basically the starting point of the film. And the child actress, who's in a way a incarnation of yourself, maybe, or an interpretation of yourself, she refuses to cry, actually. She refuses to cry, or she doesn't cry. Maybe she's not refusing, but she doesn't cry throughout the film, and in the last moment, maybe she cries. The protagonist of your film actually talks about this, and I didn't remember, actually. Yeah. I was wondering what you would say about being able to rebel against something that is already unavoidable, which has happened before, and you cannot change it anymore? Is there a resistance in your film towards this? Is she rebelling, or
In terms of emotion,
maybe
yes.
behavior, action?
Yeah, I mean, it's I was very touched by your film because it's I mean, I went through like losing my mom as well, but I was a kid. So as a kid, I think you don't know how to express yourself. You don't find the words. You don't have them yet, and there are many things that it just like the fact that you cannot put them in words. They come out in different ways, like misbehaving or things like that. In the case of me when I was a kid, and the crying thing, like now that later I lost my aunt and my grandfather, and I cry a lot, and I allow myself to cry, and when I was watching these scenes of them crying, it's like you feel like, wow, you know what, like a relief, because you need to cry when someone dies. I don't know, like this is how it works, I guess. And for a kid, I think that it's very hard, you know, because you don't know how to do it yet. So that's why for me, like if we talk about emotion, if the question was around emotion,
You're free to talk about emotion, yeah.
Yes. Yes, I mean, the thing is, I remember, and that's why my film starts kind of with this sentence, that my cousin came to me the day that my mom died, and she said, why you are not crying? You should be crying, your mom just died. And I felt very, very bad because I had to cry, but I didn't feel like it, you know, like I kind of, I don't know, like it's like you make yourself like hard, you know, and you cannot cry. So this stayed with me forever, I guess. And I remember that when I was a bit older, like maybe 2 or 3 years later, I read this little book where there was a character, an old lady who died, and I cry a lot. And I remember that as a kid thinking, I'm crying more for this woman of the book than for my mom, you know. So I guess that because I was never conscious of how I cry her, then in the film I made it in this way, you know. So yeah, I guess I wouldn't say it's depression as a kid because you don't even know what it is, you know. But there is something about expressing emotions that I think that we learn during, and it depends, and it's like a personal learning. Like everyone learns it in their own way, you know. So for me, I had this experience when I was a kid, and when I experienced that again, the crying is the first that comes to me. Like, but even if someone tells me that someone died, like even if I don't know them very well, like I cry, you know. So it's something that that to me comes like something that I didn't do when I was a kid.
Your film is dealing with 1993, or it's situated in 1993, which is a time in Spain when many people actually died of AIDS. And would you say it's also a film that confronts a memory that is threatened to disappear because there's maybe a hesitation to speak about it? So from oral history, there might be a certain sense of disappearance.
Yes, it's really very strange what AIDS triggers somehow, you know, because there is this taboo. There still is, and when I was preparing the film, at some point we said this story could be set now, and it would work anyway. But for me, it was super important to set it then, because AIDS is not the same today. People don't die of AIDS, and so it was important to set it at that time. And say something about it, because it's true that in Spain, as in a lot of places, we haven't talked about that. And then when I say openly, yeah, my parents died of AIDS, like people are like, wow, you know. And I think that it is important that the people who have experience and who can talk about it in a natural way, because have like overcome it as well, speak about it. And I couldn't, in the film, like the word AIDS is never said, because I didn't I learned that my parents died of AIDS when I was 12, And because if at that time you told the kid your parents died of AIDS and the kid goes around saying that, it's a disaster for the family and for the rest of your life, because it was such a taboo that I think that probably the people from my village learned that because after making the film I said it openly. So yes, it was important for me to talk about that and say there was a lot of people who died of AIDS in Spain. It was like one of the places in Europe that had the highest rate. And a lot of people came to me after and said, I have exactly the same story, but like not everyone knows around me. So, yeah.
In a way, all of you three took very strong control of your own biographies and found reinterpretations or artistic approaches to lines running through your biographies. Philip, as an art historian, you're actually dealing with art forms that resist being put in museums, that are actually resisting to be put in a catalog or being historicized. Would you say that controlling the past is controlling the present? Yeah, there's a switch.
Maybe.
Talking about microphones, there should be a microphone somewhere in the room, and you can wave your hand and enter the conversation. You're kindly invited to.
Yeah, I mean, there's something which we can see in art quite often, that the biography or the life of someone is used as a raw matter for the artwork. No, it's not something which you can completely separate, but it's even something which is in a way constructed. No? So it's difficult, in my view, to really distinguish between the biography of artists and the work. You know? Many artists that you can observe quite often that the phase of childhood and adolescence is kind of treated or is reflected or is used, the techniques of the time, the topics of the time, and this of course happens with a delay. Usually the practice happens 10-15 years after you were a kid. So at first hand it looks almost as an anachronism to observers. Sometimes they don't really get it, what's so exciting about the 1950s, or what's so exciting about the 1980s, because we used to see certain times in a bright light. And in using the own biography, you can shift that, no? And I think that's something which every single artist and every single architect or everybody has and can make fruitful, and that's also why it's often so attractive to listen to others talking about their life, because it shifts the way that history is generally constructed. Now, when you say 1993, I have to figure out what could that be, and but at the moment when it becomes a part of your biography, I have an entry point, as a historian also. 1983, for instance, I was discussing with friends recently. 1983, nothing happened, no. And then my friend said, "No, that's not true. It's not true. That's AIDS. It's AIDS in New York. So it's 10 years earlier than Spain." So for him, in his biography, it's the most dramatic moment. It's like 1945 for historians of the Second World War, or 1968 for fetishists of revolution, or 1990s now. Huh? Yeah, we're kind of in a phase where every year has to be celebrated for something which happened 100 years ago. No, Bauhaus, nobody cares, but it was founded in 1919. So Yeah. And the individual approach allows to shift that, and I think that's that's a very fruitful mechanism. Yeah.
And then there's, of course, the relation within the work itself, right? Gürcan, you chose a very strong form of film, and you agitate the material extremely and even dissolve it in the end. Where come in hesitations? Do I overpower the reality I want to touch?
Actually, that was coming from the experience when I was spending time with her at the hospice, because she put on an ER, and when you put on an ER, that the patient, their mind works in a different way. They are in a delirium, process, and the way she talks about time, her memories, that it was her body was adjusting to ER, and at the same time that she was talking about the past and now and sometimes future. So it all came together, and I was thinking and trying to make sense of it, and then I realized that her mind started work like a film. It was jumping back and forth, and so this is what I tried with the editing, and because her memories were disappearing, and she was talking in a way that she doesn't want to lose her memories, and she was very aware of the fact, of course, not in an emotional way though, but in a very much of a physical way, that she was saying it, and able to do that, she was trying to preserve that memory. And so I used some of the 16mm footage I shot in the past, and some of the pinhole test footage, and some anonymous found footage which found in Istanbul, but it came from Greece. So all these elements, and the way she remembers things, for me it's much more like a cinema. So that's why there are so much skin of film in Gulyabani, and I didn't want to point to the audience too directly, but I was trying to create this environment in a way that the audience could see her memories disappearing.
Talking about the audience, which is you, please raise your hands in case. Okay. I was also wondering about consequence. Do you perceive, and this question goes to all of you, do you perceive your films as empowering, or did you feel reactions of others feeling empowered through your films?
It's not an easy question, isn't it?
We are not here for easy questions.
I don't know if I'm empowered, but for me, it was very strange when we started showing the film, because I had connections with other people's films, which made me like grew and connect and like feel like more fulfilled, and I never thought that a film that I made could do something like that to someone else, And but it was very strange, like how some people came to me and said that they remember their childhood, or that they lost someone recently. This happened a lot. Like they lost someone, and it kind of like they connected through the pain of the loss, So, and I'm sure that it probably happened to other people with your films too, because it happened to me watching them. So I guess that it's just that's what cinema is about. Somehow sharing your experience that can somehow it kind of translates to others people's experience.
Actually, you made a short film before dealing with people who were born with the HIV virus. Yes. And you decided not to put them in front of the camera, but you replaced them with actors and actresses. Can it be empowering not to show something?
In that case, they didn't want to be shown. so we had to find a solution, because for me the voices were like so important to, they all were born with HIV, and as I didn't inherit it from my mom, I really wanted to know what it feels, you know, like to have your first relationship, sexual relationship, having HIV. This is like strange. So basically I found these people and I recorded their voices, and then the actors mime the voices. So you have the real voice and actors' faces. And yeah, I mean, somehow it was very interesting, because at the beginning I was like, how are we going to make this film? They don't want to be in the film, so it's impossible. And then at the end, the solution came like a really interesting way of talking about what HIV means, which is like you have to hide it. And still today, which is like, I don't know why, you know. So yeah, so it was very interesting how this kind of not being able to show something became like really talking deeply about what it means. Yeah.
Would you two like to comment on it before we open up for the first question up there, I think? Yeah. Just a moment. Any of you would like to comment first on the question?
Same.
Same?
Yeah.
All right. You too, same?
I mean, I didn't think about that actually, and when I'm in the audience and watching someone else's film, I also try to not to think about that, and
You try not to think about films?
no, the empowering part you're asking, and because everyone's experience is different, even though we are looking at the same thing at the screen. But if I go back, what you asked, that also my condition was quite similar. That my main protagonist insists that she doesn't want to scene, so it was a challenge for me. So I decided to use what she sees instead of showing her, and because she wants to remain anonymous and private, and. I just wanted to create this atmosphere. It's like half an hour trip, and for the audience through her mind. And if you calculate too much about that, and then you could damage your film. This is what I believe.
Okay, your question, please.
Okay, thank you so much. I have a question, but kind of more like a comment on a film Nakorn-Sawan from Puangsoi. So talking about the idea of disappearance and the absence for today, I think it's quite interesting about your film that consists of like two or quasi three parts. Of one is the documentary and the fictions, and also the photos slides that you also put in the film, and about the absence, which for me I think it's not just about your mom, but also you yourself as the absent one also in the film, as how to say, like how you build the accidents of your disappearance in the first part, in the footage, in documentary part, that we can identify ourselves, we can identify our gaze with your gaze, with your documentary, and then comes to the fiction part, which for me, or at least personally for me, is more like kind of an out of body experience where you see yourself in the film. So in a sense, I feel like the whole film, I see all parts together in just one perspective, which is from your eyes. I want to ask you, like, what you think about it. What you think about your absent in the film. Thank you so much.
Take your time. Could I get some rum, please?
It's because of my jet lag. I think the answer is in your question already. I mean, like, how to say? I don't know if it's the answer, but somehow I always see my absence. Like when I study here in Germany and my mom's there, and she's, as I said, like she's always send me a photo like of home or whatever going on in my house, or even she's like making merit every morning, and she sent me a photo of that table that there's some food on that. And I mean, if I haven't seen my mom in the photo, but I see some kind of the table, I still see her. But I think but if when she see my photo, it's another thing, because she never see my reality before. I mean, I was in my home, I live in my home, so I see or I feel everything like the photo that she sent me. But when I send her photo or when I make a film, it's new for her. So it's more like, how to say, like it's disappearance and appearance in the same time for her to see me and not see me. I don't know what it is. Makes sense? Somehow.
Yes.
But for me, when I see the photo, I always see her. Yeah, even like she's not there. So maybe it's kind of, I don't know if I call like experiment with my film, that okay, I see myself as the character, but actually I don't say it's me. I always say that it's not me somehow. I don't know if you believe it, but it's not me. But people always say, oh, it's you. And I think it's interesting because the audience try to like, how to say, imitate, like, okay, this girl with the white shirt is me, and the old monk in the left is the same, and that the protagonist in the fiction part is the same with the documentary, but actually it's not. I just want to make it like, it's like, how to say, fiction. I try to like, okay, let's make the fiction part of it and let's see how it's going. I mean, I copy from my dad conversation somehow and put it in the fiction part. Even it's the same or it's similar sentence, but when you like categorize, it's like fiction and non-fiction is like totally different. I mean, some audience say, oh, like the character as a father in the fiction, he act different or he act a bit awkward, but actually it's the same. It's the same with my dad talking somehow. I mean, in some sense or some conversation. So I don't know if it's like play as the disappearance and appearance too, because you always think that the reality, what you see is really happen. You see, oh, this is my dad, he is real somehow, so you can see he is like true figure. But when you know that all is fiction, somehow you can say that, oh, I don't believe him so much because, I mean, his accent or some character, oh, it's not like real. But I think it's just because the categorize, or I don't know, or the eyes that you said, oh, it's from the director or is the director herself. Does it make sense?
Talking about absence, actually, I know it's complicated with the films, but we are doing our best. Actually, I mean, now we are mixing films that are here and not here. At the same time, I'm wondering whether while we watch these films, we are actually overwriting others. Because sometimes, do you sometimes lose the memory of a film because you watch another? Gürcan's film, your film feels a little bit like an exorcism in some way. You charge these images, then you dissolve them. Do they disappear or not? Or maybe they become stronger?
I mean, the idea of making this film comes from that, actually, because
Of the idea of exorcism, you mean?
no. Maybe making exorcism of her memories, and because I wanted to imagine her, she's levitating, at least in mind, and I tried to create that, but it's a complicated question. I think I don't know. I don't think about that. because also the other filmmakers here, I mean, I think we had this relationship with the subjects, with the subjects of the films, and it's personal and it's non-personal at the same time, and the way we present them, you have to put some distance in able to structure it, and so yeah. I mean, it's the thing about the giving some space to the audience and don't fill them with the information and you know, beginning, ending, this and that, and yes, what I tried that I was very close with my main protagonist, and then I tried to put some distance in able to understand her actually, because I'm working in a field which is documentary filmmaking, and you have to learn what are you doing. I mean, what kind of film or subject you are doing. You have to learn from it. You have to be open to that experience. Otherwise, everything could be very much like you know, calculated and let's say commercial and, you know, all conventional. Sorry. And I think I understand her better now. If I compare with the times I was spending time with her.
It's even more complicated that we, of course, showed 2 films this evening, and somehow they are entering a relation in which they haven't been before, like we on stage. And I'm wondering, Philip, you talked once about the fact that you are very interested in your work, in collisions and art, which is happening in the landscape, in which like historical forces collide. That's what you said. And I'm really wondering how you feel the kind of collision we experienced tonight. You saw both films for the first time, right?
Yeah, so I'm trained as an art historian, and one of the very old established methods of art history is the so-called vergleichendes Sehen, the comparative viewing. Means you have 2 images on the screen, and you compare them, and you try to figure out what's different, what's not different. This is a method which was established in the early 20th century to distinguish you know, Baroque from Renaissance style. So and I don't think this method is very fruitful, but you cannot get rid of it. It's just there, no? So it's like a reflex. So at the moment I should eat this, huh?
No. I want to comment.
Tell me something.
Because I thought about the scene of the 2 windows in Gürcan's film.
So of course I immediately have to compare them. No, if I see them, I have to start you know, seeing similarities and differences. And one similarity which I see is that both are trying to capture something which fades away, which passes away, no? And that for me was very exciting to follow. No? How you try to pin down, to capture fragments of memories, little images which you don't completely understand, and this immediately transports to the viewer, regardless if the viewer knows about your personal implication or not. No, this works, I think, very well also on the level. Even if somebody would step into the cinema, you know, halfway through, you can follow that, and that I would say in both cases was very present. Also, I mean, this is then the motive of the water flowing, the drops dripping, the photo album. Both films have a kind of a structural similarity in resembling photo albums. Black and white in one case, perhaps more colorful in the other, but you have these images, you have the subtitles, which tell about these family stories. That would be another similarities. Of course, otherwise there's many differences. Now you have a much more, you know, non-figurative, you know, experimental language. You have a much let's say cooler way of dealing with the media, but that would be formal differences. One can could go endless on like that. But what strikes me is the most struck by this attempt to really catch something that is not blurred, to focus, for even if it's for a very short moment, to focus on something. That's I thought really captivating.
Are there more questions from your side? There's one over there.
So I would like to talk about the film Nakorn-Sawan. So me as a Thai student in Germany too, so I feel like I really feel you, and yet a really, really great movie. I would say as a Thai culture, we don't really used to share our deep feelings, and something in this movie kind of really personal story between you and your families. So I would like to ask, would you think it will be more uncomfortable for you to show this movie in Thailand than here in Berlin?
I think so. I mean, like, how to say, honestly, I haven't shown to my dad. Yeah, but when we film it, he know that, oh, you are kind of filming me, but the concept of him like watching me making film is different. I mean, for my mom, she's always showing me like using camera, going around with her or something like so you can see that she's used to the camera, and she says, okay, I'm like, okay, something like that. But my dad, he has another, how to say, perspective of me making film, like, oh, you are filming me like in a cinema, you will show in a cinema, something like that, like me as an actor, and I just say, okay, you just do whatever you have to do and I will follow you, something like that. So I think for me it's like, before making this film, it's a hard time for me to thinking of like, should I make this film or not? Like, should I put my dad or even my mom in the film to see everyone in the film, something like that. But once I decide to do it, I try to, I mean, even I put them on the screen, I try hard to make the distance, or not to like, okay, I want this from you, and I'm like naked to, hey, look at my family, something like that. So I think that for me, I can feel some, I don't know, like not so harsh to my family to watch it. It may be kind of, how to say, a memory or memorable piece of my family to see it again. And I think it's, for me, it's kind of nice because I'm not with my father. So when I went there and capturing something, it's more like, okay, this is the time that I spend with you as a daughter, and using a film as a, how to say, a tool to like at least to go there and, hey dad, I'm making a film. Because I don't know, if I'm not making film, I don't know how to like go there. I mean I can go there by train or whatever, but somehow when you have something at least as an excuse or as a method, or I don't know what to call, you have the conversation, and then, yeah. So I think for me it's, honestly, I'm a bit stressed to show in my home too, but somehow I think it would be nice in the end, at least to see everything together happening in the past again, something like that.
Yeah, turning people or lives into film is always a complicated question, especially if the people you are filming are close to you. All the films have somehow been dealing with death, which is not necessarily the opposite of life, but maybe a part of it rather. And considering that subject, maybe the opposite of life is rather non-living or being an object, and somehow films are also objects, right? Did you feel this step to turn them into film of being like crossing a boundary, or?
like use my, how to say, did you mean like use my family as a topic, something like that, or
Yeah.
yeah.
Also in relation to the fact that you are
Mm.
dealing with the death of your mother.
I think I realized later that it's kind of the way to deal with it. But I mean, before making this film, I have another project. But I mean, it's kind of similar project that I have the footage of me visiting my dad and my mom together, and then before the project is comparing with kind of love stories that I saw my photo album of my mom and my dad, and I create the fiction from that. But when I'm in pre-production, my mom like she got into the hospital and she passed away. So I decided to quit the project that time, and then after that I went back here to Germany, and I cannot do anything. I mean I cannot like continue making the project again. But there's a time that my friend invite me. Okay, hey, we have the project like making a book or scene, and I invite you to write it for. I mean, anything, you can write anything. And then once when I try to write like short story or whatever, and then Nakorn-Sawan come out, and it's the first time that I, how to say, looking back from pausing for long about my mom death, something like that. And after I write like randomly somehow, and then, okay, this is the first time that I release or reveal myself, and I read it again, and I talk to my producer again. Okay, I will make this film. I will make a film again, but using these stories. But at that time, I didn't like name it like, okay, this is a way to deal with my mom loss, something like that. But after that, it's more okay. I'm seeing more, especially in the editing time. I see again and again like, okay, I cry every time I'm watching, and then the 10th time I feel, okay, this is no more crying. I feel I'm crying if it's not finished now, but but it's not about like, okay, my mom's passed away. It's more like, okay, move this and move that. So it's more how meditation. I don't know how to call, or you deal with it by itself. But I mean, it's not like, oh, gone after the film finished. I mean, every time I look, I heard my mom saying in the conversation, I feel, okay, a bit tears. But it's not like, oh, I'm sad or something like that. It's just like, okay, I miss her, but not like sad. I don't know, yeah.
Carla and Gürcan, is the film material maybe alive in itself?
I mean, if I continue I made this feature film before this one called Meteors, and my mother just passed away, and it was a very raw film, and I was in grief actually while I was doing that, because I somehow I wanted to champion human life and the importance of human life, because it was the environment in Turkey at that time, it was completely the opposite, and I was very angry about that. So my reaction was a bit different. So there was nothing autobiographical in it, like your film, but the reaction I have, physical reaction I have, was that the grief, the feeling of grief, it was the feeling that I met for the first time, and then I could relate to Kurdish people immediately, because they were losing their children, mothers and fathers, and some majority of people was like they don't care about that, and that made me really angry. And I went and made this political film, even though it's very personal for me, but it's not autobiographical. And so I think when you lose someone, or when you want to make a film out of it, the way you are trying different ways to deal with the subject itself, I think.
Yeah, I think that the when you are in contact with death, it's like when you realize that you will die as well someday, and I think that for me, cinema is a way as well to leave something on this world. You know, like I think if I die, I will have some movies there that people will, you know, like my memory will stay somehow. I don't know if someone will watch them. I don't know, but for me, it really. I think that the resistance of disappearing, it's also on ourselves, you know, like this fear of when we die, like nothing remains here. But if you make some art in general, not only films, there is like something that will stay, you know. Yes, someone will will remember you with your art, you know, and it's like what I felt like. If you ask me for the similarities between your films, is that for yours it was like this desire of portraying, or this fear maybe of this memory of this woman disappearing. So you make a film and it will stay there forever for everyone, you know. And for you the same with your mom, you know, even if it's more like. You are talking about like some memories, and yours is like more recent, and so it's like now they are in a film, so they will never disappear, you know. But it's for them, for the stories that you tell and the people you portray, but also for us as a filmmakers to stay in the world, you know. So in art in general, yeah.
Philip, you've been dealing.
Yeah, and there's perhaps a different, because in many movies you say, or many films you see the past kind of treated in a blurred way. No? You blur it. You have a photograph and it blurs, and you have some music that's put like sauce, you know, over it, so to cover it. And for me this is a case of repressing the fact that we're mortal, no? Of camouflaging this, whereas in your work I see the contrary of the blurring, no? I see the focusing on specific moments, and this it kind of pushes away the moment of death, no? You gain a couple of seconds, no? 80, what is it, 80 images per second you gain, no? Before it disappears. And
24.
24, okay. Schlingensief taught me 18. This is wrong?
Not necessarily.
Okay. Now what? So you gain a little bit of time, but these 18, 24, they need to be precise, and that's what I take with me. It's not blurring. No sentimentality, no. Also, there's also no nostalgia. It's a specific relation to specific moments in time, and these we can reconstruct them as viewers. So that's why we can share it without crying also, because it's not you don't share the nostalgia. We can look at it also in a clinical way, no?
Still, doesn't it feel static to you? You've been dealing with art a lot that happens outside of a fixed space like this, outside of a defined image, art that happens in a landscape in which people can move freely around and find different perspectives.
Yeah, of course. There is a fixation on the screen, but we can share it and look at it together in the cinema space. I would say that's it's kind of a compensation of another space that opens. But of course, you cannot escape the frame of your camera. That's
so sharing is caring, or what?
Yeah, it's a way of connecting. Yeah. That's probably also why it's good that one looks at it together. Huh? Yeah, becomes something like discussing a house or a monument or a place together. No? It's about a connection. It's more restrained if you look at it on a small screen, I think.
So while you are looking at us, is there another question in your mind somewhere? If not, let's all mingle and have a drink outside, I would say. We put some beer there, which is waiting for us all. And yeah, let's get moving.
Thank you.
Thank you, everybody, for being here with us.
Thank you.